the kind of expression that appears when the body knows something the mind hasn't processed yet. The green lamp above Vince Darrow lit up. It wasn't blinking, just glowing steady, constant, like a promise amidst the disaster. In the sudden silence, a sharp, hysterical laugh cut through like broken glass. Gates, Darrow's voice wasn't loud, but it cut clean, sharp as a knife that has seen too much blood. The sounds cut off abruptly. When Gates fell silent, his chest heaving like a broken bellows, the hard lines on Darrow's face softened a little. Something kind, almost paternal, appeared in those steel-blue eyes, cold as steel, but capable of warmth when it mattered. "It's okay, Gates. Forget it." His gaze brushed the green lamp again. That glow was reassuring in a deep, internal way, like the beat of a heart you know is still working, even if everything else fails. With that, the onboard computer was saying clearly. The ship was upright, apparently intact. No serious damage. Pike showed a clumsy smile, the kind that appears when the logical mind still resists accepting what has happened, as if wanting to deny it for one more second. Santini remained silent, as always, his pale face animated only by those coal-black eyes that were tense, observing everything without missing a detail. Darrow gave the men the psychological shock they needed, because of course they were expecting something about the emergency landing, a comment, a sigh of relief, anything that acknowledged the madness of the last moments, the fear they had swallowed to avoid drowning in it. Darrow reacted differently. "Gates, you are to determine immediately the origin of that unknown control transmitter. The data is on the onboard computer's magnetic tapes. I want to see how good you are with mathematics when it really matters." That was it. He said no more. It wasn't needed. In the silence that followed, with the moon outside waiting silently and ancient, the men moved, because that's what they did. Move forward, even when the void stared back. The small, lively man, with a face that seemed not to have fully aged beneath an imposing baldness, that gave him an almost monastic air, was named Jeff Patterson. On the outside, you recognized him instantly by that sparse crown of golden blonde hair, interrupted by silver streaks at the temples, as if time had decided to mark him only there, on the edges, leaving the center intact. Patterson was one of those men who, in private life, felt a quiet joy in moving earthworms or bugs off the garden path, just so they wouldn't be stepped on. A simple, human gesture that said a lot about how he saw the world. Fragile, deserving of pity, even in the smallest things. But at work, or rather in the service, Patterson was something else. He was the man in the shadows, the one who pulled strings without anyone seeing the hands. The almost omnipotent chief of international defense. That intelligence organization NATO had created under the official name of the International Intelligence Agency. He answered only to the full NATO assembly and worked elbow to elbow with the national services. Those guys who lived with the phone glued to their ear and the constant fear of something slipping through their fingers. When he entered the large conference room on the 16th floor of the Space Department in Washington, accompanied by an older man who walked with the caution of someone who has seen too much, the low murmur of conversation died down, as if someone had turned down the world's volume. General Marcus Cobb, chief of the Space Forces, with that square, furrowed face that seemed to bear the weight of all the bad decisions of recent years, introduced him to those present. It was a secret meeting, the kind where words weigh more than deeds. Patterson was brief, concise as always. That tanned, almost childlike face beneath the domed forehead seemed kind, extremely pleasant, the sort that invites you to trust even though you know you shouldn't. He pointed to the pile of newspapers stacked in a corner of the long table, like a dirty reminder of what was going on out there. "Gentlemen, there's no need for us to keep circling this failure," he said, in that calm voice that brooked no reply. "I know, General, that you couldn't hold the reporters at Nevada Fields forever. In any case, solid complaints have come in, which Colonel Katz has skillfully deflected." The older man beside him nodded cautiously, a gesture that said, "I've done what I could." Katz was from the Federal Criminal Police, head of the Special Internal Defense Department. One of those guys who sleeps with one eye open and the other scanning the room. More concerning are certain reports in newspapers and those television investigations, Patterson continued, thoughtful, as if recalling something that pained him personally. "According to them, your star comet is not only missing, but has crashed completely. They give details so precise, one wonders how much truth is in it. And what troubles me more is the source of that information. All this is just so you know. We've deployed our antennas as always." Patterson glanced at his watch, a subtle gesture that said time is pressing and we're losing. Now, the star comet has been missing for over 24 hours. Let's stick to the term that still leaves room for hope. I'm interested in your opinion about those editorials in leading newspapers that categorically state an emergency call from the ship was intercepted. Signal QRRQ, which according to the Space Force code means attack, planned remote control interference, and onset of an accident. If that is true, I want details. More details. Patterson nodded kindly to the room, like a professor who has just asked a question he knows will hurt to answer, and sat down. General Cobb rose wearily, his face seeming more sunken than ever, furrowed by lines that hadn't been there a few days ago. His voice came out brittle, as if every word cost him. "You are right, sir," said Cobb, rubbing the back of his neck, as if trying to erase an old pain. QRRQ is exactly that. It's a mystery how some journalists access the code. I've put our security service to work on it. No results, for now. On the other hand, their interception of the short signal isn't that surprising. Some large stations had it tuned in the south polar region of the moon. We requested support from the major observatories. Something could have leaked there, of course, but that doesn't explain how they know the meaning of QRRQ. Nothing more can be said about that. There was a good reason why Vince Darrow had climbed that annular wall of accumulated rubble, and it wasn't just to feel the light weight of his body under lunar gravity, which made him move as if in a dream where Earth's rules no longer applied. Up there, the landscape stretched out like a forgotten desert, full of craters that looked like ancient scars. But nothing jumped out that didn't belong to that dead place. The star comet and the pressurized tent, with their silvery sheen reflecting the stars like a broken mirror, were obvious intruders. But to Darrow, they were now part of the scenery. They had earned their place through sweat and endless calculations. A subtle smile played on his lips, the kind that only appeared when his logical mind bumped against something deeper, more human. He wondered, with that self-restraint that defined him as a man who had learned to measure every thought like a step into the void, by what right he allowed himself to claim that those things belonged there. He concluded it was pure earthly arrogance, the kind of illusion men tell themselves to keep from going mad. What you conquer with effort, you make your own, even if the universe disagrees. The star comet belonged to the landscape because they had brought it. Period. Darrow let out a soft, low laugh, the kind that escapes when you catch yourself in a philosophical folly in the middle of nowhere. Immediately, the speaker in his spherical helmet crackled, and a voice with a touch of unease he knew well sounded inside his head. "What's up?" it asked. "Hey, Vince, what's going on? Trouble?" Darrow smiled to himself, squinting as he reflected on how that voice always carried a hint of concern, as if Pike was remembering the times things had gone wrong in past training sessions, in pressurized cabins where a mistake meant the end. "No," he replied calmly. "But answer, what's up?" insisted Pike, louder now. Of course he had heard the laugh over the open intercom, that invisible thread keeping them connected in the lunar silence. "I allowed myself a laugh," Darrow said into the tiny microphone, adjusting his tone to sound casual, though deep down he knew every word counted in a place where air didn't exist. "If you don't mind." A hoarse curse followed, then a cough that sounded more like a disguised grunt. "He's standing in a lunar crater, alone and laughing," said Pike, with that feigned indignation he always used to hide his own nervousness. "Did you hear that, Gates? He's up there laughing." "At least something," came Gates's grumpy voice through the system, with that accent that dragged words as if he were thinking of something distant, perhaps his family, or the nights when everything seemed simpler. "I've been trying for half an hour to scratch my back that itches like hell, if possible with all 10 fingers. No way, friend. Right where I want to reach, those 3 damned oxygen bottles are hanging." Pike let out a guffaw that rumbled in the helmet. Darrow turned the volume control a little to the left. The redhead's voice could wake the dead, or at least make the helmet vibrate like a drum. "Hey, Vince, how's the air up there?" he boomed again. "There's a storm," Darrow replied dryly, savoring the moment of confusion he knew would come. Pike fell silent, perplexed, as if running through all the lunar weather reports they had studied in his mind, looking for something he'd missed. "Because on the moon, the air is so heavily charged," Darrow added softly, letting the irony seep through like a memory of nighttime chats at the base, where humor was the only thing keeping sanity intact. "Aha, Roger, Commander. That's something one has to know." "Exactly what I mean. And since I make an effort in principle to use correct terminology even on the moon, I won't talk now of a straight line of air, but of a direct line of sight. All right? So, my friend, at what approximate distance am I from you in direct line of sight?" 852 meters, came Santini's voice, with that amused tone that always seemed to emerge when things got technical, as if you were recalling his days at university, measuring samples under a microscope. "Because I'm sitting at the tactical radar, with which I measured you to a centimeter's precision. Handy, right?" "More than that," Darrow laughed, feeling a brief warmth in his chest, that invisible bond uniting them beyond the mission.